Hi, and welcome to the Rare Business Podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm a consultant, advisor, researcher, and writer on all things related to customer service and customer experience. Through this podcast, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, and leading thinkers about what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees in this fast-moving modern age that we live in. If this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then welcome, and please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsco.com, as I've now completed over 250 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then thank you for returning, and I'll aim to do a good enough job to keep you coming back week after week. Anyway, that's enough from me right now. Let's get into the interview. So, first of all, I'll say welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. We are here today at Pegaworld 2019 in Las Vegas. Joining me today is Tom Libretto, CMO of Pega Systems, or Pega for short. Hi Tom, how you doing?
Hey, great Andrew. Thanks for having me in.
Adrian.
Did I say Andrian?
Never mind, we'll find.
It's been a lot of money.
Yeah, it's like too much caffeine and long days and all that type of stuff. Anyway, Tom, for the benefit of our listeners and readers, it'd be great if you could just give us a bit quick of a thumbnail sketch about who you are and what you do and kind of what your kind of your day-to-day life.
Wonderful.
About you.
Yeah, wonderful. So I've, obviously as a chief marketing officer, I have the honor of sort of taking the Pega brand forward day in and day out, and running all elements of our marketing operation, and ensuring that the value proposition that we're generating off of the back of our technology assets is resonating with our customers and prospects.
Okay, that's brilliant. So the thing, I just seen you be on the main stage and did the keynote, and you mentioned this kind of piece of research that you've done recently, which was, it's called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which I was like, brilliant, I love it, a Western kind of reference, kind of a bit of Clint in there. Can you tell me what was the rationale behind the research and sort of some of the main sort of findings?
Yeah, well, as a software provider of customer engagement technologies, and in this case particularly customer service technologies that span the customer service desktop experience for CSRs and employees, all the way back into the systems that need to be transacted with in order to yield a customer outcome. We wanted ourselves to know more about the state of the state, relative to how are companies doing, and from the words that their customers or consumers speak, their employees speak, and what they think about their own status individually.
And so, what was the good and the bad and the ugly wasn't just like one of those. It's not like a. What's it called? It's not like link bait sort of thing. You can click it, you go like, oh, it sounds like a good title. So there was the good, the bad, and the ugly.
No doubt about it, yes.
So what was the good and what was the bad and what was the ugly in terms of the headline sort of things that you found?
Yeah, well, I think the good pieces are that largely all of the business leaders that were canvassed in this survey, as well as the employees that work for companies that deliver service, acknowledge that there are gaps.
Right.
And are intent on doing something about it.
Okay.
And so
that is a good thing. That
is a good thing. You can't fix something if you don't know it's broken, I suppose.
Yeah, and the bad and the ugly.
The bad and the ugly is really a nod to the current state of those expectations that just simply aren't being met by a lot of companies.
But what I found really fascinating about all of this is that despite all of the change, tech and competition and customer behavior, kind of over the last kind of few years, is that good still looks the same, right?
Yeah,
it's like customers, employees, leaders, and they all agree the three most important aspects, according to your research, is that the most important things to get right are that you have a fast response, knowledgeable service agents, and a quick resolution to the issue. Right. So it's almost like the bar's still there.
Yeah.
Going, you might have forgotten about it, but the bar's still there.
I think there's some nuance there as well. The expectations within each one of those, those categories continues to shift a little bit.
Right.
I think the bar does go higher, even if those themes remain universally true.
Yes. I mean, I think, but it's good to understand, even though that the expectations are kind of speeding up, there's the velocity's kind of speeding up, is actually, the answer is very simple.
Yeah.
It's like, right first time, knowledgeable kind of people, kind of solve it, make it easy for me, effectively. Yeah. But the other thing that kind of stood out for me in the research as well is you stated that 95% of customers are looking for some degree of proactive communication from the companies they do business with. I'm like going, brilliant. But we've been talking about proactive service for a long time and how reactive is no longer good enough and it has to be proactive. And we've got the data and the technology and everything to be able to deal with that. And my question was that something I've been banging on about for a while. Do you have a sense of how many companies are meeting that customer desire kind of need, or is it still a thing that's out there that people are aspiring to? Because it seems it's been out there for a while.
Right. Well, the concept of yes, proactive resolution and predictive and preventative resolution has indeed been around for a while. I think we're still in the early innings in terms of critical mass of organizations on the planet operationalizing that concept, and it's hard. The incentive structures, the gravitational inertia that exists to simply fulfill volumes of service requests never goes away.
Sure.
So I think that it's become more important for organizations to dedicate some time, energy, and focus to moving in that direction, and we're seeing some of that start to take hold.
But it almost kind of feels like it's almost like not sexy enough.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's a little bit like, this is hard work. Yeah, and you've got to get down in the weeds.
You do.
And figure it out. But it's like, customers want it. They love it when it happens, when it's done right. Yeah. All the numbers go in the right kind of direction, but it's just like, you've got to get your hands dirty. You've got to roll up your sleeves, and it takes a lot of time and effort and discipline and commitment to get it right.
No doubt. And I think that, where we've seen success in the companies that we work with is them being very specific about the customer micro journey that they start with.
Okay.
They choose and start with and get it to done.
So rather than actually going, we're going to do it all,
right.
You go it's that, and we're going to solve that, and that almost becomes a chink in the wall, and then you start
absolutely
spreading out from there.
Otherwise, proactive customer service is a bullet point on a PowerPoint chart.
Well, yeah.
It's not turned into something that's real.
Yeah. Okay. But then the report goes on to say that consumers are skeptical of new technology and still rely on traditional kind of channels. I mean, so that was interesting as well, because it's like there's still this inordinate volume of service requests that come in over the phone and email, and they still dominate despite all the talk about chatbots and live chat and all these different sort of things, self-service, etc. Why are customers still so in kind of the email and phone sort of channels? Are they skeptical of the new tech, or is it just like they know what they like? And
I think it's more conditioning than anything else.
Okay.
I think the vast majority of companies that we work with anyway, continue to offer those more traditional service channels, and consumers and customers. I'm not sure which cohort I fit into demographically any longer, but I myself am more prone to look for a phone number on a company's website and put a call in.
Yeah.
Than I am open up a Facebook Messenger chat session.
Yeah. What's fascinating, because I know a guy from Zappos, a guy called Alex Genoff that I spoke to on the podcast before we had their customer research.
Brilliant customer service
organization. They're awesome. But here's the thing: is they put their phone number out front, sort of thing, and because they want people to call them. Ideally, that's what they'd like them to call them, because they give them the opportunity to establish that emotional connection.
Right.
But invariably, people don't. And so it's like the call volume goes kind of down. They want people to call, but it's like a lot of it's via email or chat or kind of whatever. But it's an interesting thing, because it's almost a bit like it sets an expectation, like going, you're happy to talk to us. And that's kind of a nice thing. So it's almost like setting your stall out. Right. I choose not to kind of call you. Yeah. But I can do, knowing that you're going to pick up the phone.
But I still have a positive brand.
You start from the right sort of position. Then the next thing, the thing that stood out for me in the report was that the report suggested is around this kind of skeptical of new tech. there's this idea that customers are torn about between whether new tech will improve or worsen service. And this is the sort of dichotomy that they're faced with. I mean, so this is a thing that occurred to me. I was like, but is there a danger that you're possibly interpreting the results for your own end in many ways? And equally, that they could also suggest that businesses are just getting it wrong right now. And so there's new tech, and it's just not working as well as it might.
Yeah, I think there's an element here of almost a reliance on tech being the silver bullet answer to a customer service transformation.
Sure.
And it's equal parts technology, enablement, people, and ultimately adoption of new ways of servicing a customer. So technology is certainly a critical part of the puzzle, but it's only one piece of the equation.
Yeah. And then the other thing that you talked about was that you talked about in your keynote is that there's this gap. And there's sort of it implies sort of the business decision makers are out of touch or possibly somewhat delusional, because this gap's been around for a while. I mean, I can't remember the original kind of piece of research that gets quoted. Was the 80% kind of 8 sort of Bain original number. So that's the number sort of converged.
And that's a good thing, sure.
It's a good thing, but it's still significant.
There's still a gap there,
So whether they're out of touch or they're delusional, I mean, I guess my question would be is like leaders and decision makers, why are they not spending more time on the front line? I showed you in my new book this kind of frontline superheroes and stuff, and because that's where all the intelligence is. I mean, like the organic intelligence.
Right.
Why are they not doing that?
I don't know. I think some of them do, and the companies that we've seen be more successful do invest in all layers of the organization, spending time in the contact center or shadowing calls, to have a pretty regular pulse on the situation of the customer service environment. I think those tend to be initiatives that in some cases just don't sustain.
Yeah.
And when that happens, then that rift grows, gets a little wider.
Yeah, I mean, I remember talking to a guy that I met called Matt Price, who is from the IAG in Australia, the big Australian insurance group, and they started this happiness or positivity sort of initiative. And they took a whole bunch of their senior execs, I mean the top level sort of execs, and took them into the contact centers as an immersion sort of activity, like en masse. Frightened the bejesus out of most of them. But some of them actually kept going, sort of thing. But the interesting thing that they did is they focused on getting them to call back customers that had given them a positive sort of like response, like an NPS rating, a positive comment. And here's the beautiful thing that they did, is they got these execs to call back these customers. They went, "Hi, my name's such and such from IAG. Just want to call you back and say thank you for the positive review." Kind of like, and then they're like going, because most customers are like, "What, you're going to try and sell me now?" But they're like going, "Just want to say thank you, but I wanted to ask you just one question." Is like, say it was like John or Sarah had served you that kind of day. It's like, if I was to ask you to describe to me kind of what John and Sarah did that was special, and if I was to ask you to kind of say, if I was to pass on a message to them, what would it be? And they take that message and they write the message down, and they go and hand deliver it to John or Sarah.
That's brilliant.
Super simple, mind-blowingly powerful.
Oh, for sure.
And it's just like,
yeah.
I mean, but they found it difficult to sustain it because actually, the different executives have really embraced it, because it's that whole sort of thing, and knitting together that sort of the connective tissue across the organisation, which I thought was fascinating. But have you seen other things, initiatives, like other kind of leaders do things like that close that gap?
Yeah, I think a lot of the more enlightened companies from a customer service perspective are investing lots of time and energy in making their employees happy.
Yeah.
And that comes through all the way to the end customer interaction. If that employee population is beaten down or held to unrealistic traditional customer service metrics, then you're ultimately going to sacrifice customer happiness on the end.
Yeah.
So I think those initiatives that are meant to empower employee populations with better technology that improve their day has an immediate and compounding impact on things like NPS and customer satisfaction.
The other thing I was also thinking about was also that I think we can talk about sort of lifting up the contact center, lifting up customer service, like from a leadership kind of like looking down and lifting up sort of thing. And that feels a bit one-sided, because actually I think the people that are in service and support and contact center sort of spaces, they should also be lifting themselves up as well. And I guess my question would be is like, what do you think they could do, that the people that are in those spaces do to lift themselves up or to advocate their case, as it were? Because sometimes you need to fight your own corner and not necessarily rely on somebody else just to fight your corner for you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure. I think it's an interesting concept. I think that it gets to the heart of the culture that's being driven into a contact center operation.
Sure.
If it is simply a transaction environment and it's managed as a cost center that has scaled down cost objectives, then you're going to get people that are disempowered. And either immediately or over time, that's going to produce the opposite effect of what you're looking for. So I think that organizations that are that are more tuned into viewing those frontline interaction staff as the ambassadors for the brand, and that culture taking hold within those populations, at least creates the environment for those service agents to lift themselves up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, Tom, we've been talking about all this, the research. I mean, best place for people to find it, Pega.com, search for Good, Bad and Ugly.
Yep. It's at Pega.com, and you can either search for the good, the bad, the ugly, and we'll have it all over the place.
Fantastic. I will make sure I get all that linked up. But before we go, I have two final questions, because I shared with you that I've got this new book out called Punk CX, and I've been asking kind of people two questions based on that, around this idea of taking a more punk kind of approach to customer experience. So the first question is, if a company is being more punk about their experience and the service that they deliver, what word would, or one word or two words, do you think would best describe that type of approach? I know you like your music because you're in a band and you play guitar, so you're kind of like...
It. Yeah. I'm thinking, I know words that come to mind, when I think about the attributes of that type of individual, from a mindset and a characteristic point of view, it's words like, pioneer or maverick in a very good sense.
Fantastic. Awesome. And then with that sort of in mind, what sort of like one or two kind of like brands or companies do you think embody that type of ethos, that are being those pioneers, are being those mavericks in a good way, that are just going like, we don't care, like sticking two fingers up to the world and going like, we're going that way.
Yeah.
And they're almost embody that punk ethos.
Yeah, well, I think one you've already mentioned was Zappos, but they long ago set the mold, right?
And Tony Hsieh has been known to wear a Mohican. No
doubt. I think there are bounds of others. One that we work very closely with is SiriusXM. They were on stage with us yesterday. They are really on a very aggressive customer service transformation themselves, and have adopted many of those similar attributes.
Fantastic. I love that. Tom, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian.
Great to talk.
All right, take care.
Well, that's it for another interview. I really hope you enjoyed it. Now, every time I complete one of these interviews, I learn something new, and I try and incorporate that new learning into my writing, my speaking, my workshops, and the consulting that I do for my clients. If you're interested, you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswimsko.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do listen in again. All the very best.